So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I just want to say I love being at RU. Since we've come here, I've actually learned what they do, and the Press Herald has really dug in with RU. We are welcoming some co-op students from Northeastern, and we also just enrolled in the XN program, where we'll be working with graduate students, helping us figure out some of our vexing problems that we may have in the newspaper industry. So we shall keep them very busy. But today we shall be talking about Jessica, Freeport's own. So let's start there, Jessica, where it all began in Freeport.
Yeah, so I grew up in Freeport, youngest of 7 kids. And the closest one in age to me is actually 5 years older. So I was very much the last in line.
And you graduated from Freeport High School.
I did. So I wasn't much of a student, and I came from a long line of non-scholars. So all the teachers kind of knew what to expect when this next Estes came up, for sure.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I had a similar thing, except my 2 older sisters were super smart. So when I got there and had the same experience with you in terms of homework and applying myself, they're like, "You're not like your sisters." So it's a little bit different. And so what was your experience like at Freeport?
So I didn't disappoint my teachers or prove them wrong by any stretch. I was not good at homework. And I was engaged in class, but I was not much of a student when it came to, completing what I needed to do after school. In fact, the funny story about that, one day, my junior year of high school, I was walking home from school, picked up the mail, and there was a letter from Freeport High School. So I immediately opened it, so glad that I got it before my dad, because I want him to, this was definitely going to be something saying, I screwed up in some way. So it said, "Dear awards recipient." And I looked at it and thought, and it said, this is when the awards banquet is and whatever. And so I looked at it and thought, this was clearly sent to me in error. Some other kid who was an awards recipient probably got a letter about something they did wrong, So I threw it away and I forgot about it entirely. It just didn't even occur to me. And about 4 or 6 weeks later, I walked into school one day and everybody said, "Where were you last night? You got an award." And I was like, "For what? Skipping the most classes? I don't understand. What would I get an award for?" And so my junior year of high school, there was combined English and history class. It was called American Studies, and it was more than an hour of every day, right after lunch. And I was really engaged in that class, but I didn't do so. I failed the class for the year. I failed the history portion of the class, and had to take a correspondence course over the summer to make it up. But I got student of the year because I was the most engaged and interesting student for the teachers to talk to in the class during the day. And mostly I argued with them about the stuff they brought up. I don't know.
So I think it shows though your ability to work the angles, right? To understand who you need to get to.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And I think your history has been filled with, one tenet that's driven you, which is hard work, because in high school you started working right away.
I did. So I got a job at Jones, New York, in Freeport. One of the great things about growing up in Freeport was that there were all kinds of retail stores where you could work, and they all needed help. And I started there probably at 15 or 16, worked all the way through, became an assistant store manager. And then at that time, those outlet malls were springing up all over the country. There were probably 250 Jones, New York stores and all different sort of concepts of Jones, New York. And I became store manager, and I was the youngest store manager in the company. So I excelled at work, just wasn't good at the school thing.
Yeah. So you'd walk from high school right to your
I
job.
would, yep. And in fact, my senior year, I got credits for working. So I wasn't a good student, but I was
You
clearly
have said
making
that
progress.
repeatedly. And your daughter is here. So I hope she has different.
All A's this semester with
There we go.
nothing
There
less.
we go.
Yep.
But one of your motivations you had told me was that you wanted to buy nice shampoo.
So I lived with just my dad. So all my other siblings were out of the house. My parents had split up, and my dad, great guy, loved me very much, but just didn't have any concept that something other than yellow dial soap was needed in the shower, So if I wanted to have decent clothes and good shampoo, I had to have a job. So I went and got a job.
And I bet today you have excellent shampoo.
I do. Oh, yeah, the best. And so does my daughter.
Excellent.
Yeah, she's not going to suffer through that.
And it was really your first exposure to like business women in business attire.
So yeah, I said, I grew up in a family of non-scholars. I didn't really have exposure to professional women. And at Jones, New York, I sold business suits to everybody from attorneys to people who had just graduated from law school and were going for their first interview, to retirees who were looking for an outfit to wear to a country club luncheon. So it really kind of gave me a good exposure to kind of what a working woman was all about.
Right, right. And then a little unconventional path, right? So you left Maine.
Yep. I kind of worked my way up through the ranks pretty quickly, and the next job available, if I was going to go up the ladder, was the district manager. And I knew her; she was a nice lady, but I definitely didn't want her job. So I thought, okay, well, retail is not where it's at. Let's go find something else. Took an opportunity to go to Florida, and when I lived in Florida, I had two different jobs that really shaped my future. One was managing a staffing agency. And so that gave me insight into a lot of different types of businesses and working and ways of doing business and working. And the other was I worked for an entrepreneur who bought assets out of bankruptcy. He was a really unique guy, but he bought real estate and other assets. And he had a reputation throughout the country when he was helping somebody, when a bankruptcy attorney was helping somebody through the bankruptcy process. If there was some random, asset like residual rights on real estate, or like a music catalog that, a great aunt had passed away 50 years ago, and somebody was still getting money from that, they would, call him, and he'd be the guy to buy those assets. So one of the things he did was he converted apartment buildings to condos. And so I learned the real estate world. I got to know real estate agents through that
And-
job.
So you come back to Maine and you
Yep.
get your first job at Boulos.
Boulos.
Boulos. Like, it's not that
I
hard.
spelled it out.
I know. I was going to have someone, I should have given it to Greg to hold a sign that said Bowl Us. It's a really good idea.
Yeah. Well, we're in a bowling tournament in a month. And the
Bowling
back
for Bowler.
our shirts actually say BOWL-US. So, yeah.
Just to make it easy on me, I'm just going to say your company.
I'm going to give you a shirt.
Okay, because it's pathetic is what it is. But anyway, you start your job at your present company.
2003, I took a job as a temp employee, big cut in pay and responsibility, but I just needed a place to land. I wanted to get a mortgage and, needed a paycheck, and thought, well, I'll just land here for a little while.
And you're still there.
I'm still there. Yes, 20 years of just hanging out.
So you moved up pretty quickly. So describe the company. I mean, you talked about it in the video, but give us some of the numbers.
So we have offices in 3 locations: Portland, Maine, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Manchester, New Hampshire. We have about 40 employees. And last year we did 800 million or so in transaction volume, and that was over about 500 transactions. So these 40 employees really
Super busy.
Mhm.
Yeah. I will tell you, I was surprised to hear there were only 40 employees because the scope and the sort of influence of the company feels way bigger than 40 people.
Yeah, we have a lot more signs than we do employees. So
Yeah.
just driving down the road and see.
Hey, there's value. There is value in signage. So if you describe the services or the real estate pieces that you're in, what are they?
Yeah, so everything that falls under commercial real estate would be an apartment building that has more than 4 units would be considered commercial, and office, retail, industrial, land. So we sell and lease all of those different asset classes of real estate.
And so you're there and you decide to start the track to broker.
So
how's that?
shortly after being hired, I got promoted to like an assistant broker role, which we still have as a role in the company. We call them associates now. I didn't like being an assistant anything, but I was Greg Boulos' assistant for a few years. And so that's a great job. It's like a paid internship. You learn the ropes of the business while getting a salary, and the company pays for your, reimburses you for mileage and that type of thing. We generally have 4 to 5 people in that role. And most of the brokers who work with us now started there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great way to learn the business.
And then you got asked to be operations manager.
So in 2008, it was kind of time for me to shed the employee role and move into independent contractor. But I had a lot of experience in operations management from managing a staffing agency and some other work I had done. And so the president of the company at the time was Morris Fisher, and he said, would you like to be the operations manager? And I said, no, I'm going to be a broker. But it was '08 and Lehman Brothers. I don't need to tell you the story. You all know what happened in '08. So it didn't. I had a new baby, and it just didn't make
She's here today.
Yeah, she's there. It just didn't make a ton of sense for me to go do something that was that risky at the time. So I told Morris, and I was also passionate about changing some things about the way that we operated as a company. So I told Morris I'd do it for 2 years. I would do that operations manager role.
And 10 years later.
10 years later, I was still in it.
Yeah.
Yep. And during that 10 years, I had become a partner. And the job had changed over time. Drew Sigfridson and a couple of other partners bought all of Joe Boulos' shares out of the company. Joe had been majority owner most of the time I was there, and I really enjoyed working with him. And so that was a few years of kind of just kept taking the company to the next level. And so there was always more to do.
So you said you were interested in the position because there were some things you wanted to change. Can you anything in particular?
Well, first of all, I needed to rename that role. We're no longer assistant brokers or associates. And I also wanted to adopt technology and just be engaged with our employees. I feel like, so it's kind of like a law office where you have support people and you have your producers. And I feel like you got to focus on the support people and make sure that they are enjoying their jobs and happy and are taken care of and feel appreciated, because then they'll do a good job for the producers. You don't focus on the producers. They're going to go out and do their thing anyway. So I kind of wanted to set that tone.
Which is great because you really came up from there. So you understood how you wanted to be treated.
Yes.
Yeah. And then for a while you were also the designated broker. What exactly does that mean?
So every state has a real estate commission, and for each licensed office, there's somebody who's responsible for the basically whatever the licensed operations of the company are, so the transactions and that type of thing. Taking the designated broker role after I switched in 2018, I switched from being I think I was VP of operations. I became an independent contractor, went back into the sort of the go out and make it or break it out there world. And but I took the designated broker role on as a way to kind of stay involved in operations for continuity of company operations and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So when I became president, Nate Stevens actually took that role. So he's now our designated broker and doing a great job. But it's, if a contractor, if an independent contractor is working on a deal, and we've got standard forms that you sign, but if one of their clients wants to make some changes to it, or if it's a weird purchase and sale agreement for some reason, Nate's the person they would go to say, is this okay? That type of thing. Yeah. It's risk management as much as anything.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of attention to detail, understanding what you can and you can't do.
Yeah.
So you get invited to be president by Drew, but it's called managing director. So talk about that.
So the whole time Drew had the job, it was managing director, which is, I guess, fairly standard for the industry. A lot of other commercial real estate firms throughout the country have managing directors in a leadership role. But I really felt like I wanted to go back to having a president. I feel like it better reflects the job within the company.
Yeah, and I think people know who's in charge when you're president, right? I mean, my mother still thinks I'm the editor of the Press Herald.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're doing a great job, though.
Yeah, but thank you. No one understands. No one understands. But president is very clear, Jessica. So, so describe your role. What do you feel your core responsibilities
are? It's really strategic. And it's not the bulk of my job, to be honest. I'm still a broker. I'm still out doing transactions. And so I would say it's probably like a 70-30 split, somewhere around there. Drew would tell me that it should be more like 90-10 and I should be more efficient in the president role, or, back out of some of the things I'm involved in on a day-to-day basis. But I actually really enjoy it. And so it's strategic, and we've got a great staff, just wonderful, talented employees who manage day to day.
And so you're really responsible for setting the tone and building the culture at the company. So how do you do that?
I'm not a particularly formal person. I don't know if you've noticed. So I like to have fun, but accountability is really important to me. And our core values, upholding them, that's really important. And also being a bit of a cheerleader. The broker role is a tough job. You've got a lot of companies are making big decisions and long-term decisions, and you're working on different transactions with lots of different personalities. And so it's important to keep everybody motivated and engaged in the job and build resiliency.
So in the video, you talked about the core values of the company. One of them that jumped out to me is balance. So I feel like if you're in the real estate industry, you're on all the time, right? You're expected. It was funny in the video where it's like, get back to people in 24 hours. I'm like, I was thinking 24 minutes. So how do you strike a balance in sort of an always on industry?
That is a good question. And when you figure that out, I would love for you to let me know. No, so one of the balance tenets, believe it or not, for us is work hard, play hard. So you're working very hard, but we also want you to, and this is the tone Drew set years ago. If you have a goal of, climbing a mountain or, jumping off of a bridge, you know what I mean? And like bungee jumping somewhere or jumping out of airplanes or whatever it is, learning to fly airplanes, we want you to have the time and ability to go also, right, accomplish those other things in your life that are really what life is all about and not just be focused on work 24/7.
Here's a question that came in from the audience. Talk about the transition from peer to boss in negotiating your new position and compensation with the company.
So within the different roles I've carried in the company, one thing I'll say is that I've been with the company for 20 years. I am by far not the person who's been there the longest. There are lots of people in the crowd right now who have been longer than me. And so over time, I've engaged with them in different ways, in different roles. And I think a lot of it is just about being the same person every day and having clear expectations and being a good listener.
Can you explain the difference in your business of being an independent contractor versus an employee?
So as an independent contractor, you really, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, but you're one of the company, right? You're one of us, but the Boulos company gives you a platform on which to run your own business. And so we don't tell you how much to charge for commission. We don't tell you what hours to work. And so we do have accountability, and you do have to have a certain level of productivity in order to be affiliated with the company. But you are an independent contractor. You're building your own business.
So it really is like almost you're running your own show with the support services from the company.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. You've done work with a leadership coach. So talk about finding somebody to help you hone your leadership skills. What are some of the takeaways that you use every day?
So this was somebody that I saw speak at an event held by USM, I think, years ago, and he was just really interesting to me. I actually brought him in a couple times to work with our company on a couple of things. We would have get-togethers. We'd go off-site and do mini retreats or something like that. And he just really appealed to me. I met him for coffee a couple of times, and it was almost like therapy as much as it was leadership coach. We worked a lot on presence. And kind of one of the books that he recommended that I read was Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. I was really angry. I'm like, second half of life? What are you talking about? And then I realized,
do they have one of their? Does he have a sequel, The Third Half of Life?
No. I don't know.
Okay.
But it was a good book. Strongly recommend it. But it was really, I think it's really good to kind of take a step back and consider your values and what you've accomplished and where you need to grow and how to move on to the next phase.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned to me, and when you talk about presence, is when you're the leader, people are watching you.
Yes.
Right? They watch what time you get there. They watch what time you leave. They watch the tone of your emails.
So in a company where you've got, employees sort of rank and file, you've got middle management and then upper management, the employees are focused on what their direct managers are doing. The managers are focused on what upper management is doing. And I think it's really key to be cognizant of that when you're at work and what tone are you setting for the people who are paying attention to you every day. Yeah.
One of the things you shared with me is that you realize that you have ADHD.
Yes.
So how does that manifest itself? How do you control it?
So this totally explains why I didn't do any homework. Like as soon as I left the school building, I was not focused on that, right? I'm like a sport. My brain's like a squirrel. I'm just here, there, everywhere. So it wasn't until my daughter a couple of years ago got diagnosed with ADHD, and I started doing a lot of research on what it means. And I was like, oh, I see
That's
myself
me.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me. And so I have a great therapist. I recommend have a therapist if you want one, no shame in it. And so I've talked to her about it a little bit, and she said all of the all of the coping mechanisms that you've developed are very classic. It's pretty typical for people to not find their footing until they're in their 20s and they've kind of figured out how to do things. And one little example is reading glasses. So I can only focus on so many things throughout the day, or else I'll just be completely scattered and useless. So I do not need to be constantly keeping track of reading glasses. It's easier for me to just pay the $10 for a pack of 4 of them at Marshall's every time I go through the checkout. And my family will tell you I have reading glasses all over the house, in cars, at desks, and like nightstands, everywhere. So that every time I need a pair of reading glasses, I could just pick up a pair. I'm not having to focus on keeping track of those. And I'm sure I leave them at restaurants and airplanes and airports and whatever. So I'm just spreading reading glasses.
Or pretend, though. I mean, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
And you work better on deadlines then.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have to force myself sometimes to build myself a deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, like last night at 9:30, we were sending questions back and forth. Yeah. I
My-
have that same deadline.
My accountant emailed me yesterday to say, like, how are you doing on taxes? It's almost time. I know. I'm getting there.
Yeah, but you really figured out how to make it work for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's the kind of thing that you have to constantly kind of go back and reevaluate, because the more successful that you become and the more you have going on in your life, then the more things you have to make sure that you're keeping track of. And so you have to find new ways of kind of coping with the next thing.
Yeah. Are you a list person? Do you write or no? Because I am.
I do, and then I lose the list.
Oh, okay.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. Okay. Good. So I hate to talk about COVID because I just want to move beyond it, but how did it impact your business? Because you're all, brokers, salespeople.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. We were terrified, like nobody's ever going to go into an office again. What's going to happen? And here we all are. So I would say that we got a really resilient crew. We weren't out of the office for a particularly long time because we really feed off of each other. We, being together is important to the whole ethos of the company. And so, and even our administrative staff, our brokers, management, everybody wanted to be in the office. We don't have people saying, I want to work from home. And I guess that's because we're all so fun to be around. I don't know. But we wore masks and we social distance. We had different days of being in the office. We have individual offices, so we could go in and close the door. We were really good about making sure that if somebody had been exposed, they stayed out of the office. And we just, worked hard at kind of accommodating. But I will say it was kind of nice that one summer to be coming into town and there was no traffic.
Yeah, true. What kind of takeaways have you seen that are trends now in terms of office space? Like, are people needing as much office space? What has that done? What has that done to the market?
Yeah.
What are employers doing to make their spaces more inviting for people to come in?
So that's one of the big trends. If you look around here, I mean, this is one of the nicest office spaces in Portland. And this is a place I would want to come to work every day, between the view and all the greenery and, the design. So a lot of companies are thinking about that and what to do to encourage their employees to come back into the office. I think that the hybrid work schedules are going to be the thing, going to kind of be the norm for a lot of companies going forward. And companies are going to have to be really thoughtful about what they can do, what policies they can institute, and what things they can do to convince their employees to come back in. I've talked with a lot of company leaders throughout the past couple of years that have said, what can we do? How can we get more people into the office? Because I think most of the time, the leaders do want the employees in the office. We're actually hosting a breakfast on the future trends of the office build out and design. I think sometime in May. So
we
feel free to reach out to me if you want to join.
Can we all come?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I just got in trouble by Topher. I don't know if he's here, but he's mad at me right now. He's our VP. He's our operations manager right now, and he's like, "Great, we need a bigger room now." But
it's definitely something that people are thinking about and considering, and
Yeah.
When your lease comes up, you're like, oh, do we really need the space? And will your employees make a commitment to be there, but they want the space? But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. No, it's
challenging.
some companies have downsized a bit. Some companies are just revamping their office space. But I wouldn't say, there's a lot of cities that depend on public transportation to get people into the office, or there's big high rises. We haven't had speculative building construction in Portland as much. So when COVID hit, we were really at capacity. I would say we were kind of in a logjam in office space. There was really no companies couldn't move because there was nowhere for them to go. So it's provided maybe a more healthy kind of office environment for us, where now there's space to go to. We'll see what happens over the next 12 to 24 months as these leases roll. A lot of times, if you signed a 5-year lease in 2018, it's just now coming due. And so there's a lot of companies that have been committed to their lease, and that will continue to happen over the next few years.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. So I noticed in the video, there are a lot of men that work at your company, and you're the president. So, and you came up, through an admin role. What's that like for you?
I like it. I mean, it's straight talk, all the time. We can have conversations. I'm not a particularly, I don't talk in nuances very well. I don't get nuances very well. So I like to be able to just have straight conversations. There have been a couple of times, I think for a number of years, I was the only female. Every Tuesday morning, we have a brokers meeting, 7 or 7:30 in the morning. Everybody who's licensed gets together, and we talk about what we've got going on in the real estate world. For a number of years, I was the only female in those meetings. And I remember one year, it's a long time ago, but one of the brokers referred to me as Vanna. I was like standing up to do something. And I mean, like, no knocks against Vanna. She's smart and makes a lot of money. And, I'd probably trade places with her if I could. I'd certainly trade dress sizes with Vanna. But
She doesn't have good eyes.
great arms. What's all that turning? Anyway, so I just looked at him and said, don't ever call me that again. And I just moved on. And that didn't even really register for me. But a couple months later, one of the other brokers in the meeting said, I really love the way that you handled that. And so I just don't think about it. Like, I just say, okay, let's not go there and move on. We all have jobs to do.
That's right. That's right. Leaders and mentors that helped you along the way.
I've been so fortunate to have some great mentors. And I think Maine, I haven't really worked like this in any other community, but I think we have a great, and I see some of them here today, community of women who just really lift each other up and support each other. And I feel very fortunate for that. And I'm a big proponent of taking somebody out for coffee or for lunch and just chatting with them. And I know when I was thinking about considering whether I should take this role as president, I went out, I think it was for a glass of wine after work with somebody who I have a lot of respect for and has been in business for a long time. And she really just kind of fired me up and pumped me up and said, Jessica, this is what you need to ask for. And this is what, I was like, oh yeah, you know what? You're so right. So I really appreciate that kind of perspective from other people.
That's great. I do find the community super supportive. You can reach out to anyone, and people get back to you, and they want to help. They want to help you. People want to see you succeed. Give yourself a performance review. What are you most proud of, and what do you need to work on?
So what I'm proud of is the relationships I have with the people in the company and people in the community in general, and the work that I've done with my clients. What I need to work on is probably time management and organization. I've certainly taken a lot on over the past year, and so I need to do a little bit better at kind of keeping a lot of balls in the air. I will say I have an assistant named Sarah who's right there, and I'm learning to use her more, just sending her emails and saying, schedule this lunch, which feels really nice. So that's helpful.
Good. I'm going to transition to audience questions, and if people have questions, I'm going to look to you very shortly. This one comes from Peter Fendler from Hub International. Are you seeing interest in repurposing unused office space, and if so, for what uses?
So I would say that office to residential conversion is probably mostly what I'm seeing. There's some long-term or short-term corporate apartments that are being that are converted from office space to corporate apartments on Middle Street. There's more in the works, I think. So certainly Class B office space, which there's a fair amount of in Portland. We have a fair amount of old product. I think the question is Does it make sense from an expense perspective? It's very expensive, any kind of construction these days. And does a building footprint lend itself to residential? And if it does, I think a lot of owners are considering that transition.
Great. Grace Brown from Black Dog. How have you built your confidence within yourself to put yourself out there to make your dreams and goals come true? A nice question.
Good question.
A lovely question.
And I would go back to the mentor thing, having people who around me, both in my family, my friend network, and then my professional network who are really supportive. And I found that help is out there. You just have to ask for it.
Melinda Sheehy from Diversified. How is Boulos, good job, supporting affordable housing needs in Portland?
So we work with a lot of affordable housing developers. Portland is fortunate where we've got a lot of very talented developers. And, I think that sometimes in the news media, they take it on the chin a little bit. I don't know if you've read the comments on some of those
Oh, yeah, we don't read comments.
But it's a risky proposition. They're putting a lot of money into these deals, and so we've been involved in a lot of those affordable housing developments over the years. Yeah.
Catherine Wygant Fawcett from the Institute for Family-Owned Business. How much are the fluctuating interest rates affecting the real estate market, and for how long will that be? Crystal ball time.
Yeah. So I think you'd have to ask some people with the Fed how long it's going to be. But the interest rate environment is definitely impacting commercial real estate, and I think people who are financing projects right now are doing interesting things with interest-only loans or adjustable rate financing, short-term balloons, expecting that in 3 to 4 years they're going to be able to refinance it at a lower rate. So I think everybody's just trying to figure out how to make the numbers work now because they're hoping this is not a long-term situation.
For sure. Gretchen Johnson, Pretty Flaherty. I heard owners of unused downtown office space are considering converting them into self-storage units. Did you read about that in the Press Herald? Because I don't recall that, Gretchen. But anyway, how can we avoid this kind of dead space? Are there regulatory or other ways to prevent that, to keep the downtown vibrant?
So there's this concept of highest and best use in real estate, and it's probably something everybody's heard. But anybody who owns an office building that is currently vacant is looking at it and saying, what's the best thing I can do? What can I afford to do? And what's my, what are my options? And so there might be situations where people are saying, gosh, self-storage is something that's needed. There's all these little micro apartments being built now. People are living in 400 to 500 square feet. So where are they going to store all their stuff? So, in some cases that may make sense. If it doesn't make sense for a residential conversion, what else are you going to do with it? But I will say it's gone the other way. It's funny that the question was from somebody from Pretty Flaherty, because the Pierce Atwood building on Commercial Street, that was cold storage for, I don't know, decades. Mm-hmm. And then somebody came along, North River came along and said, you know what, we're going to turn this into office spaces, some of the nicest space in Portland. So, the market will dictate, and things get converted one way and converted another, and yeah.
Well, I do vote keep self-storage out of downtown Portland. That doesn't seem. I think we all need less stuff. Right?
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Any questions from the audience? Questions for Jessica? Wow. Anyone? There we go. Catherine.
So I know you're a big proponent of your colleagues and your mentors and so forth, and you represent business women so well, so thank you. What's the one thing that you want to do to pay it forward?
Good question.
That is a really good question. So I think I appreciate all the women who came before me, and I think it's our job to make it easier for the women who are coming after us. I think there's organizations like the Olympia Snow Women's Leadership Institute, and I know that you're involved in that, and I think several people here are. It's such a good organization. They go into high schools and find girls with potential who don't maybe have the family structure, and that can kind of relate to that situation, but really kind of help them find their, I think it's values, voice, and vision, right? And help them kind of get set for the next level. So ultimately, at some point when life settles down a little bit more, I'd love to be involved in organizations like that. But I think, yeah, making the way easier, giving people like my daughter a kind of clear path forward, and having no preconceived notions about what they could do or could be, because regardless of whether they're female or.
Sure, you can really do anything. And it's funny that you mentioned the Olympia Snow program, because I bet they would have plucked you out of Freeport High School to be in that program.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm not sure any of my high school teachers would say that they would expect to see me in this seat right now. Like,
Right.
and if they did, they might like have they might be thinking of the wrong student. I don't know.
No. But you should be invited back for Freeport High School graduation, right? 100%. 100%. I'm texting the superintendent.
Oh,
because you would be a great speaker. Any other questions from the audience? You knew I was coming back to you. I can't believe you're all being so shy.
Everybody's
Yes. Jane.
What kind of legacy do you want to leave for the Boulos company? Like, is there a goal you have that you want to outlive your career there?
That's a really good question, Jane. So I want to recruit more women into our industry, into our office. And I think that there are several things about the job that can be difficult, especially if you're trying to raise a family and have a career, which I know you have a career and a family, and it's a balance. So I certainly want it to be a place that has a better balance of women and men working together. We are hoping to move this year. I think we're going to end up moving offices. I'd like to design new office space that better reflects who we are as a company. We've been in the same place since, 97 maybe. So it's time for us to kind of build our next chapter, and I'm excited to be able to help make that happen.
Great.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite places in Maine? Go into the lighter side.
Depending if it's summer, it's on a boat somewhere, ocean, lake, and if it's winter, it's probably going to be on a ski slope or snuggled up with my cat in front of a fireplace, and yeah.
Nice.
So.
Nice. What keeps you up at night?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I try to leave work stuff at home. I think on the global scale, what keeps me up at night is really some certain things about our political environment right now, and the fact that we're not necessarily represented the way that we should be with things like gun control and that type of thing. So there are some and things like affordable housing and that type of thing really do kind of concern me, that I really hope we start to make better decisions around those areas as time goes on for our future, for our
Yeah, I mean,
generations.
those are definitely some heavy burdens when you're trying to sleep, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know that they actually keep me up at night.
Yeah.
but, yeah.
I want to ask this from my own understanding. I have a really hard time putting my phone down, and I'm also trying to teach my teenager about his phone habits. How do you set the tone with your phone and your daughter?
Yeah, this is a sneak question, Lisa.
I know,
I
it's a
wasn't expecting
total
this
sneak
one,
question,
I am
but I
not
just-
good
I-
at that. We're
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, she refers to herself as a screenager.
Oh,
which I
that's
think
adorable.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
I will say, I hired her to run my Instagram account, because I have an Instagram account for a commercial broker, Jessica, or something, I don't know. Anyway, and so she runs it now, and I hadn't posted in like 2.5 years, and now she's
on it.
Yeah, she's posting. She's doing great.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you all. Oh, did you have a question? We'll take one more. Go. Were you waving, or was that a question? Okay, go.
Hi,
Yeah,
Rob.
go. Yeah.
So, I mean, I know your company a little bit, but what's most challenging right now within the walls of Boulos? Within your company?
I think it's getting people aligned as far as this move that we have coming up. I mean, if I'm looking at this exact point in time, we need to make some decisions around capital expenditures and how we're going forward with that. So that's probably challenging. There's also a lot of, we need to make some decisions around succession planning and bringing more people into the partnership fold and that type of thing. So those are some of the things kind of on my plate going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, those are in your president 30%, right? Those are big issues to battle or to parse through.
Yeah, sure. But it's a great team. The partnership group is phenomenal, and just really lucky to be there.
Well, I think it's clear that you set the tone, that you work hard, but you but you also have fun and you feed off of each other as well to be successful.
Yep.
So thank you for leading the company, and thank you for being here today. We are off for Like a Boss until September, when we'll be back here at RU with Jacqueline Edmondson, who's the newish president of USM. That's all our annual back to school. We always like to have a college or university president. So we appreciate you joining us. Also tomorrow night, we have a Maine Voices Live that you can register for. And it's Eric Sandin, who's the Academy Award winner that grew up in Gorham. He won for visual effects for Avatar. So that's, so many interesting folks from Maine. And we love to spotlight them, like Jessica. So thank you again for being with us this morning. And I hope everyone has a great Tuesday.
Thank you, Lisa.